Yeah, all this is being recorded now. Yeah, all of this is being put on tape now.
And put in an archive.
That's right. Yeah, so what we'll do is that when we get the tape from the end of the day, I'll cut this out. And then we'll have the show, but we'll also have about 8 or 10 minutes of us doing nothing but being on television. Yeah, God is good. Contemporary Black Lives Matter movement.
That's right.
Yes,
That's right. That's right.
10 seconds.
Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the contemporary Black Lives Matter movement. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about the contemporary Black Lives Matter movement, Dr. Louis Baldwin. Dr. Baldwin has been with us on a number of occasions, and I'm almost certain that he needs absolutely no introduction to our audience, Dr. Baldwin. I think that, as we've said on many occasions, you've been with us almost since the very, very beginning.
That's right.
And we certainly can appreciate what you've already given to us. But we're also looking forward to what you have to give today, and especially when we talk about the Black Lives Movement. And before we get into what you have called, Dr. Baldwin, the contemporary Black Lives Matter movement, let's talk about Louis Baldwin, to have you to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of your experiences. And then by the beginning of the second segment, then we'll have an opportunity to get into an introduction to the so-called Black Lives Matter movement. Let's do it from that perspective.
Well, I'm a native of Camden, Alabama. I grew up there in Wilcox County, Alabama, which was called at that time the Alabama Black Belt. I attended schools in Wilcox County. I graduated from Camden Academy High School in 1967. And from that point, I matriculated at Talladega College in Talladega, Alabama, majored in history. 1971, I graduated with a BA degree in history. And from that point to Crozer Theological Seminary in Rochester, New York, where I received the MA and MDiv degrees. From that point, of course, to Northwestern University, where I received the PhD degree in 1980 in American Christianity. And from that point, of course, I've been involved in scholarship and teaching. I taught at Worcester College in Ohio, Colgate University in New York, and for 30 years, I taught at Vanderbilt University here in Nashville. And
so, and also known, Dr. Baldwin, I must say, as one of the most important individuals dealing with the scholarship of Dr. Martin Luther King. Even though today we're not going to talk specifically about Dr. Martin Luther King, we're going to talk about a movement that I didn't know that much about personally before we talked about it.
That was inspired by.
That was in a real sense inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King.
Exactly.
Let's see if we can, Dr. Baldwin, during this first few minutes during this segment, to have you to give us some understanding of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Well, the Black Lives Matter movement actually started in 2013 after the acquittal of George Zimmerman for the murder of Trayvon Martin. 3 black women, Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Oprah Tometi, decided that they would get together and start a movement that would deal with the intentional and systematic killing of young black men. And they said, well, hey, this is about black lives. So what we want to do is to go on social media and to sort of promote this idea that black men are being systematically and intentionally killed, not only by vigilantes, but also by police. So the movement started in 2013 after the acquittal of George Zimmerman. It blossomed in 2014 with the killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. And since that time, of course, the movement has continued with the killing of Eric Garner, with the killing of Walter Scott in South Carolina, with the killing of Freddie Gray in Baltimore. So the Black Lives Matter movement is not only a slogan, it started out as a slogan. Some might say that it was a rallying cry, that it was a social media hashtag, but now it has become a movement with chapters in 23 chapters in the United States, Canada, and Ghana. And of course, since 2013, there have been more than 700 demonstrations in connection with that movement.
But you also, Dr. Baldwin, I think, can trace that movement, as I think you explained to me, way back into the civil rights movement, to the early parts of the civil rights movement. And so although it only started in 2013 in terms of being what you consider to be the contemporary Black Lives Matter movement, but you can also, it also has a history that started long before this. And
I think Black Lives Matter has always been a theme in the black freedom struggle. If you go back to the antebellum period with Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman, they were all echoing this theme.
Okay, Dr. Baldwin, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll take this first commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll pick up on the history of the Black Lives Matter movement. Okay. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. We're still dealing.
And then the last, where are we going from here?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so would you, do you want to do some history about it? Because I think you were talking about...
Yeah, we want to go into the historical background of it.
Well, let's give about we've got to have about 8 minutes.
Better to talk about that.
Yeah, and then that last 10 minutes we can get into whatever else you wish to deal with.
Sounds great to me, yeah. Yeah. This is fun.
Yeah, it's all laid out here. And see, this is some important pieces of tape that we're getting right here. Not only does it deal with the subject here.
Yeah, how do you put it in a larger context?
In a context, yeah, that's right.
Because I don't think a lot of people do that. Yeah, a lot of people do that.
Yeah, so we're getting ready for the second segment. It goes like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It goes just like that. And this is one of 5, my first of 5 today.
Yeah.
So we'll be out of here about 2:30. Oprah does 1 a day, and I do 5.
You do 5 a day. You got other people.
Yeah, we got 5 more people to come in and occupy that seat.
Oh, man. Doc, you're a busy man.
Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. Louis Baldwin, and he's given us some information relative to the contemporary Black Lives Matter movement. And of course, Dr. Baldwin, I think that when we left, we promised that we would give you an opportunity to talk about the historical significance of the Black Lives Matter movement and how it started. Let's talk about it from that perspective.
Yes, I think we have to understand that although the movement started in 2013, after the murder of Trayvon Martin and the acquittal of George Zimmerman, we have to see that movement in a larger historical context. Black Lives Matter actually started in the pre-Civil War years. If you look at the speeches, the activities of Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth, they were all echoing this theme, Black Lives Matter, in the late 19th century. John E. Bruce, Henry McNeil Turner, others were speaking to this same theme, Black Lives Matter, early 20th century. Ida B. Wells in her crusade against lynchings. We're talking about black lives and how they matter and how black bodies should be preserved. And so in the 1950s and 60s, you get Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. talking about the sacredness of human personality and black lives. So what you have with the Black Lives Matter movement today is a movement that represents, I think, a continuation of centuries of freedom struggle. It's a part of that unbroken tradition of black struggle. And so we have to understand it, I think, in that larger historical context, although the movement started in 2013. It's a part
that is the idea, and that's why you call it the contemporary Black Lives Matter movement, because it's really a continuation in a real sense, but it's now contemporary.
Yeah, it's contemporary. It's both contemporary and a continuation of this long history of struggle. And so we have to see it in those terms.
And all those individuals who were concerned about any deprivation against the black population, especially the male. Is there something that is peculiar, Dr. Baldwin, when we talk about this movement dealing with young African-American males? Why is it, where does a male fit into these movements?
I think it's really about vigilanteism. We know that Trayvon Martin was killed by a vigilante, and the movement started with an emphasis on that. But in time, it blossomed to include this idea of police misconduct and police brutality, which occurred, of course, in the case of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. And later with Eric Garner in New York, with Jordan Davis, of course, you had vigilanteism in Florida with Jordan Davis. And of course, you had others like Walter Scott in South Carolina, who was killed by a policeman, and Freddie Gray in Baltimore. So the movement is really focused on the killing of young black men, the intentional and systematic maiming and destruction of young black male lives. And interestingly enough, you have black women who are spearheading this movement. So that's what it's all about.
And when you look at this movement, Dr. Baldwin, and you think about the institution of slavery, I think you already mentioned that as part of the framework of the movement. When you look at this movement, it appears to me that the emphasis is on young African-American males, primarily because those are the most dangerous individuals dealing with the institution of slavery. That is, if slavery is to be overthrown, it is not the African-American female, nor the African-American older person, but it will be who? Those young African-American males. And so that's the group.
That's right. That group has always been vulnerable. It was vulnerable in the pre-Civil War years, the antebellum period, as we call it, vulnerable in the late 19th century, earlier 20th century, the civil rights movement, and even today. The systematic and intentional killing and maiming, destruction of young black men, I think, is the issue here with the Black Lives Matter movement. Not to negate the fact that black women are also victims. I think there are statistics that show that every 48 hours, some young black male, female, or child become the victim of what? Vigilante violence or police violence. So it's a movement about the sacredness of black life, about the value, the dignity of human life and black life more specifically. So it's not only about black males, but it is about black males. It's about black people and their right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And I think that also, Dr. Baldwin, I'm reminded that there's such a real problem in terms of the economic situation of young African American males.
Exactly.
I think that when you look at the statistics for today, you find that they represent a large element of the population whose unemployment is greater than any other area. And so not only is it the killing of African American males, but it also has an aspect in terms of their economic deprivation and their social deprivation and et cetera.
That's an excellent question. And we often forget that when we go on social media and we check out the Black Lives Matter movement, we think it's only about racial profiling and police brutality and misconduct. It's also about poverty and economic injustice. They're very much concerned. Alicia Garza and others who are heading this movement are concerned about poverty and economic injustice, about teenage pregnancy, about incarceration rates in the black community. So it's a movement about the sacredness of black life, that black people must be concerned about black lives, that they must consider black lives sacred, and that the larger society and culture should also embrace this idea of the sacredness, the dignity and worth of black human personality. That's what it's about.
Very good. And so however you look at it, whether we're talking about the immediate destruction of black life, or whether we're talking about a slow destruction of black life through the inability for most individuals to get work and create a situation where they are always at one another's throats and et cetera, et cetera. That's all part of it. The treatment, part of it, in a real sense, of the young African-American male.
Yes, it's not only about police brutality and racial profiling, it's about what happens internally in the black community, is that black people themselves must respect the sacredness of black life, which means, hey, we have to deal with black on black crime, as well as police brutality and misconduct, as well as vigilantism, which results in the deaths of black males. We must deal with all of these issues.
And of course, Dr. Baldwin, we're going to take this second commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
All right,
so,
all right.
Yes. Black Lives Matter. And now you want to know, where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? Is the movement going to sustain itself, or is it just a fad?
Well, it looks like it has already sustained itself from the very, very beginning.
Worldwide media attention.
Yeah, from slavery. It's just wider. You see, I think
black bodies are important, I think. And as long as there's police brutality,